We begin tonight with the controversial issue which has stirred Nigeria's polity and politics in the last few weeks. Now, President Bola Tinubu has signed the Electoral Act 2022 Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2026 into law, marking a significant step in the ongoing efforts to strengthen Nigeria's electoral framework. Here are key changes in the amended Electoral Act 2026. Nigeria's National Assembly passed the 2026 amended Electoral Act on February 17, mandating electronic results transmission. The new law compresses timelines, tightens voter ID requirements, and increases penalties. The 2026 Act reduces election notice to 300 days. Funding must reach INEC 6 months pre-election, with compressed windows for candidate submission and publication. Electronic transmission to IREV is now compulsory. BVAS remains the accreditation standard, while physical EC8A sheets serve as primary backups during technical failures. Registration is limited to NIN, passports, or birth certificate. While PVCs are mandatory, voters can now download cards online to prevent disenfranchisement. Indirect primaries are abolished, leaving only direct primaries and consensus. Parties retain autonomy over these modes, though internal guidelines now regulate direct primaries. The amended law introduces a tougher stance on misconduct. Statutory fines and custodial sentences for electoral offences have been adjusted upward from 2022 standards. We now cross to Abuja to join former Education Minister and rights activist Dr. Oby Ezekwesili. Also with me in the studio here in Lagos is a legal practitioner, GT Ogui. Both of them will be doing a deep dive into the signing of the Electoral Act. Thank you very much, Dr. Ezekwesili and Mr. Ogui, for being here. It's my pleasure. Thanks. I'll start with you in the studio. I haven't had the honor of having a conversation with you on the Electoral Act, so I'll just ask you your thoughts on the entire process that led to the signing, the controversies around the clause about transmission and manual, and the protests that have trailed it. Well, my general impression is that this is just another step in our electoral experimentation and democratic process since 1999. By my reckoning and calculation, this is the 8th amendment of the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act was amended in 2001, 2002, 2003, in 2006, 2010, 2011, 2015, 2022, and now in 2026. And it proves the point that in the legislative process over the Electoral Act, instead of legislators, our representatives, proactively taking a bold step to comprehensively reform the Electoral Act in tandem with the wishes of the people and best practices, electoral practices all over the world. All we've had has been a piecemeal reform, year after year and all that. And I dare tell you that maybe another 3 years or 4 years down the line, we'll still reform this Electoral Act, which is still the same thing that has been done with all the alterations to the Constitution. While, many persons are saying that rather than have that kind of piecemeal approach to constitutional making or remaking, we should have one, popular constitutional making process where all the concerns will be attended to. Now, the major controversy regarding this amendment is the issue of transmission of results via BVAS and RF portal. You recall that
the 2015 amendment introduced beavers, particularly regarding accreditation of voters, so that the process will be very authentic and that there will be integrity in the process by identifying voters. Because, as Nigerians know, rigging starts from accreditation process, when people who are not supposed to vote are allowed to vote, including minors, etc., whose names are not on the electoral register. So, 2015 introduced beavers. 2022 introduced IREF. But even at that, we had a problem with that. And so the big contention has been whether there will be automatic real-time transmission of results. But in discussing that issue, there had been a lot of obfuscation, if you like, because basically we're still balloting. We've not transited to a full some electronic conduct of election. So it's not that we are going to have a process whereby people will go to the polling booth and punch in all they need to punch in, and then there will be an automatic transmission, and then there will be collation. No, balloting will still take place, and results from EC8A will still be produced. It is that result that will be scanned and transmitted. That way, people can then, do their own tallies. People can do their own collation. But what this Electoral Act is saying is that there will still be that, and from that, you still go to the World Collation Center, to the local government collation, to the senatorial, gubernatorial, or national collation center in Abuja, depending on whether it is a senatorial election, gubernatorial election, and so on and so forth. The issue is whether you're going to have that electronic transmission of the results, and that if those results are not transmitted, whether that should invalidate the election. And of course, eventually, the way the National Assembly resolved that is to say, okay, unlike before, when transmission of that result, EC8A, was discretionary, as affirmed by the Supreme Court, when it said that it was in the electoral guidelines, and that having been banished to the electoral guidelines, INEC had the discretion, the prerogative to transmit or not. Now it's been made mandatory because it's now inserted in the body of the legislation, which is an improvement. And I think that with that, we'll see how far we can go with that in our path of experimentation come 2027.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Ezekwesili. You've followed the whole situation, and activists, I even saw one earlier speak on the fact that they will continue to push until changes that they want happens. What is your immediate response to the signing of the law, of the Electoral Act, despite the heated rejection of the particular session on e-transmission?
No, the political class has behaved to pattern. Are we surprised? I think that what happened earlier today is basically the political class, the executive branch, and the legislative branch of government telling us that they will not change. We have always seen swift action anytime that the politicians want to act against the interest of the Nigerian people. There is a swiftness that really tells the story of how they have decided that our democracy is determined by them and not by the citizens. And so I'm not surprised. But what I know for a fact is that they would have to bear responsibility for whatever happens in this country on the lead to the 2027 election. they would have to be responsible for how the citizens respond to this clear vexation and provocation of the citizens of this country who are asking for a simple thing. Just simply saying, we want electoral transparency. That's all they are asking for. And then they have leaders who are saying, we don't care about your demand for transparency. We prefer the dark ways. With that, we prefer ambiguities. We prefer opacity in the way that elections are conducted, because we really don't care about your power as citizens to be the ones who vote and give legitimacy to us being in public office. And so there is a journey that's yet ahead of us. It is not over until it is over.
Okay, let me come back to you. Do you believe it is over? Because one of the contentions here is the powers that was given to INEC to decide if they're going to resort to the form or they're going to do e-transmission. That's it. Some would say at the heart of it, and I've spoken to guests here that say it's a trust deficit. If the people had a little more trust in the process, perhaps it wouldn't be such a contentious issue.
I agree. Trust issue is there. But as I said earlier, because this, in a manner of speaking, a collation of views and, perceptions and all that. The issue, and I must dilate here a little, is whether we're going to make electronic transmission of results absolute under that provision, or we're going to allow for a window of an alternative. The fear which borders on the issue of trust is whether that kind of ambivalence or ambiguity, which Dr. Ezekwesili referred to as opacity, will not be exploited to the disadvantage of the Nigerian people who are yearning for a transparent process. But the way it's being explained is that since you have that result in your hand and you are expected to transmit it electronically, whether there are challenges of network or whatever, you are expected to transmit that electronically. In case that is not possible, that result will be taken to the next collation center and so on and so forth. And that at the end of the day, there's an assumption that agents will be there who will have been given the results. The fear of many, particularly partisan political parties, is that in the event that they do not have the capacity to put polling agents all over the, because in the last election, many political parties didn't even have the means or the numbers to have polling agents everywhere. We are talking about 177,000 odd, wards, polling units all over the country. So in the event that they don't have, what's the guarantee that those results will be transmitted and they may get votes from those polling units? And I think that that's the fear, because if their polling officers are there, their polling agents are there, they will have been given the results signed by all the officials and the representatives of the political party there, hard copies, which they can use for their own collation to, predict or determine the outcome of the results. And I think that the law is not the cause. The cause is the conduct, or if you will, the misconduct of politicians and those who bid for power. So that even if you had insisted that transmission alone, electronic transmission of result, should be the way to display result on RF and collect result without recourse to the hard evidence, the copies from EC8 that you have, you then be dealing with the possibility of politicians themselves now hacking into and then disrupting results from certain areas.
So even the e-transmission is not insulated.
So we can improve on our law. That's what I'm saying. We can improve on our law, and we should continue to improve on our law. But we must also, in tandem, improve on our electoral conduct and our democratic process.
Dr. Ezekwesili, you've advocated many times for mandatory electronic transmission of results. But the arguments, I mean, as upset as many are about this decision of the president to go ahead and sign and the controversies around the electronic transmission, some say it's possibly the only option if we do not have adequate infrastructure for real-time transmission of results. Do you believe that should that become law, e-transmission, for instance, that wouldn't have these issues? Are we there yet?
You know, it baffles me how people sort of take joy in saying we're not yet there. Why are we not yet at? In 2021, the electronic transmission of results from polling units was first used in the conduct of the Anambra elections. And I think it recorded an average of 98% successful transmission of results. In the 2022 Osun election, it was used. In the 2022 Ekiti election, it was used. Average success rate, 98%. Why is that so? It's so because it's a simple thing. It really is. It really is a system to enable people to have an electronic documentation of what has been agreed to have happened at each of the polling units. People are trying to confuse this whole thing. Some are pretending that what advocates are asking for cannot be done because advocates are saying when you vote, then it goes to the internet and then you can see the result. No, it's actually what has happened that this electronic transmission on a real-time basis is mandatorily saying put it up on the internet into the INEC result viewing portal so that it is there. It is really a transparency mechanism because we do know that from EC8A that carries the results from the polling unit to the next level collation center where it then cascades up until it gets to the national in the case of presidential elections, is subject to human agency. And that what we have usually seen is that as it transports itself to the next level collation center, TPEX cancellations. Haven't you seen mutilated EC8A forms? That when that happens, in a case where it is mandatory for the electronic transmission to happen, when you present that kind of a mutilated one after it left the polling unit, the one that was automatically uploaded into the IREV will be a comparison. On the basis of it, it can be clearly determined that something wrong has happened. So when citizens say that my vote must count, they are essentially putting trust in the fact that when they are at the polling unit and the counting of votes has happened and it has been recorded into the from EC8A, and uploaded into IREV while they were there, it is what they see on the IREV that reflects what happened when they were at the polling unit. So if you go cancelling things and changing numbers, it will catch up with those perpetrators.
Okay.
And when it goes to the law courts, it would be an acceptable evidence in the eyes of the law. That did not happen in the 2023 election. So the mandatory nature of this means that you have legalized it, and that nobody would say that it is not a sufficient evidence, because INEC is not under any mandate to do what you are providing as your evidence.
Dr. Ezekwesili, I hope we have enough time for me to come to talk about the government responsible for the response of the people. I'm really interested in that. But before you respond, let me ask Mr. Gunye to share his thoughts. What are the implications of the Electoral Act 2026 on the powers of INEC to conduct free and fair election?
INEC has a duty to conduct a free and fair election, and they say that they will conduct free and fair election. But at each turn and bend, they remind us that they are not the only agency involved in the conduct of election. Law enforcement is involved. And now on the side of civil society, observers, the citizens themselves are involved. Does INEC, for example, have the power to prevent politicians from sharing money and buying votes, and to prevent people from selling their votes? I think that INEC does not have such power. Because when you're talking about the free and fair election, it's not just about the duty of INEC, but also about responsibility of everybody across the board. But regarding this a new amendment, new law.
Yeah, manual.
Yes, I think that the excuse or the alibi that was available to INEC the last time, in not faithfully and handsomely, transmitting election results electronically, that alibi is gone now, because statutorily, INEC is now mandated to transmit those results.
But the discretion as to who defines what is failure to communicate, communication, those loopholes, are people being unnecessarily panicky, or these are really cases that would possibly make a mess of all of this at the end of the day, and then we'll still go back to courts?
No, those fears are genuine. They are genuine, because I tell you, for all the electronic appliances that we use, either in banking, electronic banking, or whatever and all that, if you transmit or you send money, I'm going to use that. It's as basic as that. You send money, and there is a digital network problem, and that sending of money is hanging. Your money is reversed, or it will take time before
it comes to you.
So there can be no excuse that, the network will be failing us if you transmit and it doesn't go. Keep doing that until it goes. And if it bounces back, redo it again, so that at the end of the day, 100% all the results will have been transmitted, perhaps over a 24-hour period. Okay? And so saying that, in case this does not happen immediately at the polling unit, you can no longer transmit, rely on the Form EC8A, is giving, in my view, a room for the possibility of manipulation.
Sorry, I'm going to come to you, Dr.
But thus far, that's the legislation the legislature has given. And they say it's democracy. Okay? So citizens have the right to protest, but by majority, they've given us that legislation, and by frenetic speed, the president has 30 days to sign. He signed it on day one. So that's the new legislation we have to deal with.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm harping on this, but who decides at what point in the process that this is going to happen? We're going to do it manually. Is it at the discretion of the officials at the polling unit or the collation officers?
This is my assumption. Given the way that section 60 is worded now, it becomes the responsibility of the polling officer. And there will be an ostensible, verifiable basis at that unit for a recourse to just the Form EC8A and abandoning the transmission. For example, what they've said is that if the electronic transmission is not immediately possible there, then there will be a basis to rely on Form EC8A alone to move to the next collation center. Now, that means that scientifically, it can be decided there and then, just as we see in previous elections, that, oh, Beavers is failing, it's not moving. So for people to then understand that, oh, there's a network challenge here and there, on that basis, the polling officer will then be in a position to decide that, look, this apparent.
I sincerely wish we had more time, but hopefully we could have an exclusive on this. Dr. Oby Ezekwesili, you said earlier that the government...
I do have to correct. I must correct something first. Let me correct something first. Okay? Listen, uploading the scanned EC8A is similar to you sending a WhatsApp message to your friend. And then it turns out that there's no network. As soon as you have a network, it will go to the person. That's how simple this technology is. It has been used. It has been proven to not have this kind of level of failure that is being built into our law. So what they have done is to say, we have given you electronic transmission, but then they've taken it away by those provisos that they have put about failure and about all other obstacles that they are intending to make the norm. They are going to turn those provisos to the norm.
All right, I'm being told we're really out of time. So in 30 seconds, if you can, the concerns you raised about the response of the people, because some activists are saying that they're going to continue to protest this decision of the government. What do you expect to see in the coming days in regard to this signing today?
I've already said it. The citizens are not going to back down. It is good that the president has shown that he's no different from the legislature, or that as a matter of fact, it was all instigated by the executive. Now we would have to face the fact that they have declared war on our democracy. And those who care about the democracy will fight for the democracy. Thank God some of us fought for this democracy when it most mattered.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oby Ezekwesili, for speaking with us. And, of course, Mr. Jiti Ogunye, a pleasure to have you in the studio.